Welcome to the One Player Podcast, the show on solitaire board games. I'm your host Albert, and this is episode 338.
Albert, what is a superhero's favorite part of the joke?
The punchline!
Ba-dum-bum.
That was great. Yeah. So, I guess you survived the teleport from last week pretty well?
I wouldn't say that. I barely survived, Albert.
Okay, I'm so
Literally
sorry.
lost in space on unsettled planets. Maybe we'll talk about my adventures next episode.
You missed a great episode, too. I'm so sorry. Oh, well. This week, though, we're back on Earth. We're talking about Sentinels of the Multiverse yet again. This is a game that has come up repeatedly on this show. And this time, it is not a back to the table, specifically. It is a looking forward. Yeah. I want to talk about... So there's the original Sentinels Multiverse that came out, like 12 years ago or something now.
And I feel like maybe we should just do a very quick run through of what Sentinels is before you start getting onto new things. To be very clear, Sentinels, the original Sentinels, is a cooperative card game where you are playing a set of heroes going versus a set of a villain or a set of villains. And all of the heroes, they're pre-constructed decks. You don't have to build anything. You just pick your hero and it gives you a deck. And at that point in time, you're going to be running your deck. So it's going to be handed card management. As you draw from your deck, you'll use it to power certain powers. The different decks have different feelings, and the different villains have different feelings. Almost always, your goal is to draw some sort of power to punch from your deck, some method of dealing damage, and you have to deal sufficient damage to the villain to be able to defeat them. Meanwhile, the villains are either trying to defeat you or run whatever program or side goal or quest or whatever it is that they're trying to do. Most often, it's just beat you up. They sometimes have other powers. Thrown in there are environment decks, so you also have to run the environment deck, and the environment deck will also throw its own cards out. All of those are pre-constructed, and you just keep going, dealing damage back and forth through your cards until someone wins.
And this is not specifically a solitaire game. It is a cooperative game. But if you don't mind playing 3 sets of heroes, you can definitely solo it. I have done that plenty. And it works just fine, I think. So this game, like I said, came out like in 2010 or so. I'm not sure exactly what year. It was pretty old. The designers, this was their first game. They're really big superhero fans, and they come up with this game, and publishing was a huge success. So the designer was pretty young, and the artist was pretty young, and not a ton of experience on both their parts. That definitely talent in there, but the art can be a little bit rough in the older stuff, and some of the game was a little.
You say that like some of the newer stuff doesn't always have a little bit of edges to it.
Well, it's a style. It has style. But so it came to a point where they said, now that we're older and we know more, we'd love to redo this game and fix things that were not right in the first time around, including redoing all the art. Because that's one thing I know that they didn't like, the artist didn't like the art, and wanted to redo it. Also, all the art is brand new in the newer edition. So I think we're mainly talking about
the definitive edition.
Yes, definitive edition, as well as, if you still want to keep your old edition, but still want to keep expanding it, the Cauldron expansion, which is a print-and-play expansion that's available. Actually, it's a couple of expansions.
So, you mentioned the Cauldron as if it's a real expansion. It's a print-and-play expansion. It's a fan-based expansion. It's not made by Greater Than Games. They have permission from Greater Than Games to be able to make their stuff and publish their stuff. And in fact, in something I've never seen from any other fan-completed game thing, they actually are able to charge for their product, and they have a profit-sharing agreement going on with Greater Than Games. So it's as close as you can get to official without being official.
Yep, and I don't think the people that make the Cauldron make any money off it. I may be wrong. I think
they do.
Or if they do, they don't make much, I think.
I mean, I don't know how much money you make anyway in our hobby. Our hobby is not exactly full of riches. But half the profit goes to them and half the profit goes to Greater Than Games.
Okay. So I want to talk about both these things because these are both different ways to extend your game if you already have it. Or if you just want to get into it now, you may want to jump into the definitive edition and forgo getting an older version. Say if it's a cheaper one. You can find it cheaper now or whatever. Gosh, so where do we start? We don't need to get into all the details about the rules and whatnot. We kind of gave a good backstory. So let's talk about the old game and talk about the Cauldron expansion first of all.
So you're wanting to compare Definitive Edition to regular edition? Is that what you're trying to do?
I'm wanting to tell people about stuff we haven't talked about before, which is the Definitive Edition and also the Cauldron. So it's two different. It's almost like two episodes in one, actually, if you think of it that way.
Albert, I'm still limiting your time.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Yes, I know. You got to run.
Oh no, it's just a matter that I don't want you being like, hey, it's two episodes in one, so we can go for a whole hour. No, you can't.
No, we can't. Okay, so I'll be fast. So the Cauldron, we already talked a little bit about, is that fan expansion. It's actually more than one expansion. I think it's like 3 or 4 different expansions, but they all vary in size. It doesn't feel like an official expansion in that there aren't any set number of heroes. Like the first one I think has like 15 or so decks, maybe as much as 20. The next one might have like 5. And it's just, I think as they had them available, they released them, is my guess. Either way, they're print and play, so if you want to print them out yourself, you just download and print the decks you want. You could also buy them online. You could get them printed through DriveThruRPG and pay for the printing and get professional quality cards. If you do that, then you could buy them as an expansion, or you could still buy individual decks that you just want. I will say I did get them all. It's a little expensive. It's more expensive than the original game would have been. And I think that's just the nature of print and play stuff through like DriveThruRPG. It's just, it's just more expensive because it's print on demand. I have played a fair bit of it now, and like I say, I was quite taken aback by the cards and the breadth of diversity in all the characters and how they play and how they work and the themes and whatnot and how well they integrate with the base game. They're basically all brand new heroes that they made, and each one feels unique and different from everything else that has come before or in the existing sets. There's plenty of heroes. There are villains, and there are environments. And all this mixes just fine with the original edition game. You can mix and match any way you want. If you get all this and you have all the original content, you have something like 75 heroes to pick from, for example. When you're playing a game with 3, you pick 3 at random, it's going to take you forever to see all of them. So it's a neat way to expand it all. I really have enjoyed the Cauldron. The art is on par with all the art from the original editions. All the flavor text looks just like the original cards. All the cards in the original edition, right? They have flavor, and the new ones too, I guess. They have flavor text where it's like quotes from a different episode of the comic books of Sentinels of the Multiverse comics, and here they continue that where there's still quotes from the new comics of the new characters, and sometimes including Sentinels of the Multiverse official characters. So it's really blended into that same universe. That's the attempt. And as I said, it feels like when I'm playing with it, it doesn't feel like some offhand, low quality fan made thing. It feels just as good as the original. I quite like it. I'm very happy with having gotten it, and I love how much it extends my game, because that's the one thing I love about games is being able to play it and every time having a different deck. I've been playing a ton of Dominion on my phone lately, and I just love that. Every game's different. Same idea.
Albert's just going off on a tangent.
So that's the Cauldron. I don't know if there's a whole lot more to say about it. I think it's worth it.
But let me ask you a couple of questions about it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get the print and play ones? Did you purchase printed copies?
I purchased it through DriveThruRPG. So I ordered through them, and they probably took about a week and a half to get the cards. Probably about 2 weeks. And everything comes, all the decks are there, and you go through and you kind of sort them. All that worked great. My dogs are making so much noise right now because my wife is home, and they're super happy about it. There's no way you can't hear that. Anyway.
Oh, I can hear it.
Yeah, and I know the audience will be able to hear it. Those animals are so crazy. The one thing you don't get if you buy these expansions are the dividers. Well, 2 things. The dividers in the box, and you definitely need more storage for all these cards. Because, like I said, there's a ton of them. But you can get dividers printed from not DriveThruRPG, but the Game Crafter. They have dividers for all these expansions. And so that's what I did. I ordered those, and everything's all sorted now really well and mixed. The only weird thing was the dividers are taller than the ones that came with the original game. So I had to cut them down a little shorter.
Is the card quality you got comparable to the original game's card quality?
I think it's... I really don't remember comparing it very closely. It's good enough. If it's lower quality, it's not by much at all, and it's just fine. Since you're not mixing the decks in your hand and or as you're shuffling them together, it'll never be an issue. But I did not find the quality to be problematic.
Did you find them? Did you find that there's a variation of complexity across them? Because I know the original one, some of the decks are more complex, some are less complex. Do you feel that the same is also true here?
Yes, definitely. I do think they lean towards more complex, but there's definitely some that are not very complex at all. There's variety, but yeah, the overall the complexity level is higher in this. There's a lot of new ideas and mechanics that they threw in there, and some characters that are just have strange strategies. There's one guy that I like that he summons, like undead, and then they're attacking you, hurting you each round, and you have to destroy them. When you destroy them, that's how they hurt the enemy. So it's a weird mechanic where you're taking damage and fighting the things you create to indirectly hurt the bad guys. Weird, a little bit tricky, but fun.
Does all of the do all the rules text and things, are those all clear from what you've seen? Because I know one of the issues with the original ones sometimes is that the rules text, like even the original, the rules text wasn't always the clearest for what a card meant. Sometimes you had to parse it out. Do you find yourself having to do more or less or about the same with that for these ones?
It's about the same. I mean, this was an expansion made for the original edition, so I think it keeps the style of the rules and the card text similar. It uses all the same format and layout and whatnot.
Do you know if they have any intention for updating it or releasing it for Definitive Edition?
I do not know for sure. I hope so, but I don't know. I mean, the thing about doing that it would just be a matter of well, I mean, they could redesign them all, but otherwise it'd just be a matter of rewording all the cards.
I would also wonder if they'd want to change the art, because again, there was an art update that happened when they went to Definitive, and so I don't know if they'd also want to update the art.
So I don't know much about the person that did the art for the Cauldron. I don't know if they have the skill level to do that or not, honestly. But it's because the original art is now, or the new art is now different and more it's way more complicated in the new game. So it'd be a huge effort to redo all the art. And maybe we should just go ahead and transition to the new game. One of the things that we did in this is we redid all the art, and all the new art is now looks more like all the old art looked all very consistent across the deck. The new art, the colors and styles are different depending on what era of the comic book series it came from. So some of these, one of the things that Sentinels Multiverse they did with that is they didn't just make up superheroes. They made a whole comic universe, including a publishing company that publishes these comic books. And they came up with a whole history and a timeline and how the company started and later on merged with other companies and blah, blah, blah. And when different heroes came out in time and things that changed in the different comic book series. It's a huge, huge, complex mythology that they came up with. So when they redid the card art, if they were using a hero that's been around, say, from the 50s, and they wanted to have reference comic books from the 50s, the art is in a style of the 50s. Including it just looks like a really old comic book. Where if you have the same character from a comic from the New Millennium, it looks like a New Millennium comic book with New Millennium colors and all that stuff. So within the same deck, it transitions a lot. That must have been a huge undertaking. I can imagine doing the same thing for the Cauldron for something that's a fan expansion, where you're not, as you said, you're not really making any real money off that. So I'd be more than impressed if they did that. And so the new edition, yeah, they redid all the art, and they redid pretty much all the decks. It's still a work in progress, right? I think it came out around 20...
You're saying, by the way, as if the most important thing, like in the update, they really did two things, I think.
Yes.
They updated the rules and the rules texts to try and make those clearer and more brief, and they updated all the art.
Yes. And I used the art as a transition. That was deliberate, to now get into the rest of the game. It was a segue.
Okay.
That was intended.
Look at you being professional and stuff.
You blew my cover. So I was saying, they came out, I think it was around 2019, and they've been releasing one expansion at a time. I think the third one is not out yet, but should be available soon. they're releasing them in the same order, I think, more or less, as the original ones. Has make sense. They're redoing all the characters from the original one. I don't know that they're going to drop any. They are adding some decks. But like you said, they redid all the cards, all the rules to make it cleaner and easier to follow. There's some things with the original game that it's a little it's not necessarily confusing. It's just there's a lot of looking at the cards, trying to figure out stuff. Some stuff says it happens at the beginning of the turn, end of the turn. You got to read the whole text to see it. With the new game, it's all now clearly color coded and labeled. So if it says beginning turn, you'll see it in one color, and every card you just look at it. If that color's there, you know that matters during the phase you're currently in. If it's not, move on to the next card. So it really speeds that process up. They also made a lot of the text more consistent, where before they might say, I can't have a good example, but they say discard a card or put a card in your discard pile. And they'd say the same thing 2 or 3 different ways. Now they've come up with specific terms, and they use that term consistently throughout the game.
I also think one of the ones that for me, just when I saw some of the changes in rules, something that like popped out to me was the idea of reduce damage dealt to this card by X, or reduce damage dealt by whatever it is. And instead just as -1 damage. Turning it, what it feels like they tried to do is use as few words to describe an idea as possible. Mm-hmm. And that highlights for me almost what it is that they're doing in a lot of these transitions that they made to the definitive edition.
Yep, yeah, they did a lot of that too. I have found it a little frustrating, to be honest. All the terms they came up with, to me, are not obvious. I don't remember any offhand now, but they have.
I was going to say, which terms?
Well, they have a term for drawing a card from your deck, and they'll have a term for looking through your deck to draw a card and put it into your hand, and a different term for looking through your deck and taking the card and putting it on top of the deck, or directly into play. So each of these have a term. And I mean, it's great. Once you learn the term, you've got it. But I have been so used to the old one, I have found it frustrating and difficult to get used to it. A lot of referencing the rulebook and just getting confused over and over. I get it. That's on me, whatever. But as a transition, I have found that hard. And so I think if you're used to the old one, you might also potentially find that a little tricky. I mean, it's all for the good. It does make the rules cleaner and whatnot. I say whatnot a lot. I noticed it the last episode too. The other thing they did is they redid a lot of the decks and characters and stuff to make them. It feels like they play faster. Like a lot of them are up and doing big damage more quickly than the old decks, so that it's just more exciting, and the game, I think, plays a little quicker because of that. So that's another change. I thought I was not gonna like that. I find I don't have any real opinion on that. It's fine. Doesn't bother me. It doesn't excite me either. The game does not feel any like it's rushed or anything because of these changes. I haven't noticed that. I haven't felt the differences are huge either. And so I think
You're saying the differences in speed is not huge?
Yeah, the differences in speed and the way they change the mechanics to make them feel faster, I haven't noticed it a whole lot. But I mean, again, here's the thing. Like I said, I've bought all the expansions for it, and I've got the Cauldron. So when I'm playing
for definitive.
For the original edition, not the definitive.
Oh.
So when I'm playing though, I'm always picking random decks. I even made a web app for myself so I could have a random deck each time I play, a random set of cards. So I'm not going to see any individual deck that often. You know, like I said, there's like 75 heroes and I'm playing with 3. Each hero's going to show up about once every 25 games in theory. Which also means they'll last a lot longer, I guess. So anyway, so that's generally the game, the changes in the game. They did change everything else. They changed the environments. They've changed the villains. All generally the same ideas before, just generally kind of tweaked how they work, cleaned up the wording, cleaned up some of the rules, so that things are way more consistent. I got the game for my son for Christmas because he also likes it a lot. And I said he's gonna, at some point he's gonna move out to college and he's gonna want to play this game, so I'll get him his own copy. Plus, then I could try out the new version. Really. And yeah, we've had fun with it. Oh, the other thing
just so we know that we both justify these things to ourselves. Yeah, I'm getting it from my child. Totally not for me to play.
Totally. I'll let him borrow it. His game. But the other thing that they added is like sort of mini campaigns. I forget what they called it. But there's a few decks in the box that have little special rules for certain games. Says you play against this villain with these restrictions in the game. And then if you win it, it's like you're playing a specific comic book issue and it has the art from the comic book and some text about it. If you win it, you now win this card. It's in your comic book collection, so to speak. And you could use this card in a future game for a benefit. Later on, you're playing another game and you're struggling. It says, well, I could go ahead and use this card now. And I don't know any of the effects, but let's say everybody gets to draw a couple extra cards or somebody has a bonus for this round. And you've used it, and now you get that comic book out of your collection. So you get to it's not really a campaign. It's almost a legacy thing. I don't know. But it gives you a boost. And there's different levels of these comic book collections. Some are easier than others. So you may want to get the easier ones so then you can go up against the hard ones and hopefully earn the hard ones too. And collect them and then spend them and whatever. Not whatnot. So that is the
just lean into it, Albert. Just make it your thing. Get yourself shirts printed. Whatnot.
Whatnot. Maybe so. I don't know. Whatever. It bugs me. So that's the two games. Finally the third thing.
I don't think I've heard your opinion on the art, and I kind of want to get your opinion because I have opinions. What's your opinion on the art changes?
I like the consistency of the older art, personally. I was fine with it. It was a little rough, honestly, maybe not that great sometimes, but I liked it fine, and I like that it's consistent. I struggle a little bit when I'm playing the game where I have old art and new art in my same hand, and I find that a little incongruous to look at.
When do you end up with old art and new art in the same hand?
No, I mean like you have a card that's from an old issue and a card that's from a new issue in the same character's deck.
Oh.
And they'll use that different styles of art in the same deck deliberately. And it's a design choice, and I think it's a really clever design choice, and I like the idea, but I find it, when I look at it, I find that a little jarring still.
I very much dislike it. I don't... Okay. Yeah, I don't like the look of the old art. For me, they went really heavy into looking like an old comic book. Just with the style, the coloration, the dot matrix on it, the way it's printed. They went very heavily into that style of design. New comic books even don't look like that. You have to really be going in for a nostalgia feeling. I don't need that nostalgia feeling. Like, for me, it just looks old and underpixeled and a little bit blurry and hard to see. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of the art. I think that the original art just looked better, looked more crisp, I think.
And more consistent, yeah. But I do think it's really cool because, like you said, the art does look old and it's pixelated and all that. It's made to look like the style of printing they did in a comic book from that era. But if this deck, like I said, is a character that's been around, say, from the 50s all the way to the present, the cards, if you line them all up, will progress in time. And as the printing techniques and change over time, the artist would then introduce new colors that were now available in comic books and remove some of the pixelation that used to happen and deliberately change the palettes and all that to match the periods. So you'll see an evolution of a comic book series over a large period of time if you were to lay all of those cards in order, which I think is super cool. I absolutely love that. But I find it hard to play with.
I don't even find it cool. I don't even find it cool. No, I hate it.
I like it because it was a very deliberate choice to recreate history, a made-up history, granted, but historical technology and whatnot. I think that's pretty cool. Whatnot.
No, even by themselves, every time I see that old art come up, it looks faded. It looks old. It doesn't give me any. I don't have any warm fuzzy feelings about that old art style to make me like, this is better. Like, I look at it like, why not give me good, clean, clear, crisp art? Give me modern styles.
Are you a comic book fan specifically, or?
I used to be a much bigger comic book fan. I haven't really had much time in decades.
Yeah. I read some when I was around senior and after that, like a high school senior. So around 18 to 21, 22, and I read them for a little bit, didn't have interest in the superhero comics. I started reading Sandman when that came out and all those Vertigo comics, but that was it. And
yeah,
all the interest faded for me.
I mean, my personal history with comics started from a kid because Until I was born, my mother collected comics, and she had a room full of comics that she wasn't too concerned about maintaining the value or didn't know about maintaining the value, but she let us read it if we were careful. But, that's open and read, so it definitely reduces the cost of it. But in the end, she sold it for around, $10,000 for a room full of comic books.
Wow.
So I read that throughout, being a kid and throughout high school, and enjoyed those comics and continued to enjoy comics for several years, but it was never something I wanted or I did invest heavily in having, but it's certainly something I enjoy reading. There's a number of comic series that I would still enjoy, recently and today. I just don't, it's not something I purchase and enjoy as a hobby or enjoy collecting, but it's certainly something I enjoy reading. And seeing old comics, it doesn't make me enjoy reading it. I wouldn't want to read a comic in that style. And so when I see it, I'm turned off by it.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I the history of it fascinates me. I've always liked the history stuff, so I mean, there you go.
It's kind of in your character too.
Yeah, well, there you go. The other thing I think worth mentioning about this, if you have the old edition and you're wondering, man, but should I get the new edition? Or am I just fine with the old one? So you can mix them. There is, if you search for online, the Greater Than Games has a conversion guide on how to use your old content with the new content. It's like a 2-page sheet just telling you, oh, these are the terms that we use now. Here's what they mean. So when you see an old card, convert it to this. We haven't play tested all this stuff for balance, so we
stuff may break.
Work or not. I've played number games and it was just fine. I think because of the change in balance, you might find it harder with old heroes versus new villains, or easy with new heroes versus old villains. But that's okay because there's so much variety already in the difficulty just based on what heroes and villains you pick. So I don't think that matters a whole lot. I even tried where we played. Me and my son each had 2 heroes, and we each played an old version and a new version of the same hero, just to see how that would feel. And it worked fine. The new heroes did better, but not by much, honestly. It only got weird when sometimes we had a card that said, it probably wasn't a great idea. Like some cards, like which heroes come to mind right now? Omnitron as a hero, for example, he has cards that will get him bonus based on or affect every robot he has in play. Well, if you have 2 Omnitrons, they both have robots in play. Suddenly, you're affecting a lot more cards, and it makes it a little too powerful. So you kind of got to watch out for those kind of edge cases. But otherwise, again, I think it works fine. I don't know that you need to go out and buy the new one. If you enjoy the old one, just fine. I don't think the improvements in streamlining make such a huge difference. But, I mean, they're nice. I wish it was in the old version, but I could live without it.
Yeah, I don't think you want to go out and buy the new one, personally. That's my opinion.
No, not me. Yeah.
I like the rules text. I like the rules text. I like the clarity that's brought in. I think that the writing on the cards is better, but the different art, perhaps even some of the layout of the cards, sometimes feels like wasted space. But that's probably just because they have bigger cards that I'm not familiar with. But it doesn't feel. The card art hurts it so bad for me that I would not. I'm not interested in it.
Okay. The one thing I really like about the new cards that I wish the old cards did is where they highlight the different term parts in different colors, so that it's really easy to spot immediately.
Yeah.
When you look at the card. That right there is worth it. And I've considered going through and highlighting all my cards in different colors where the text is saying beginning of turn or end of turn, whatnot, just so I could have the same effect.
Yeah, you're not wrong. The text.
I haven't.
You're not wrong. The text is a significant upgrade. The art is a significant downgrade.
That's funny. Yeah, interesting. Well, okay. Is there anything else I want to say about all this or need to say about all this? I don't think so. I mean, there's so much to this game. It's a fun game. I like it. So I think you can't go wrong no matter what. Barring, as Julius says, the art, I guess. But for me, it's all fine.
Albert's maybe less picky than I am.
Mm-hmm. True. But I'm not getting rid of my old version. I don't care what.
Oh, I'm not recommending that you do that. Granted, I still play on the digital one instead of the physical one, but I'm not recommending you do.
Yeah. Oh, and they don't have the new version of the digital.
They don't. They've commented that they'll consider coming out with it, but I wouldn't get it if they did, and I'm not really holding my breath and will do so. I don't think they will.
Maybe they'll force it upon you.
Retard
the old app and make the new ones work or something.
Could be. But
yeah,
I'll just stop playing.
All right, Julius. Closing comment?
I think that just about did my closing comment. The art is such a downgrade that for me, it's sloughed off. Like I so much don't like the art. I want it to be consistent, and I want it to be consistently good, and it's not.
All right. Well, until next time then. Not a closing comment. Yeah.
No, I couldn't think of one there.
Yeah, that's okay.
Oh, how about this one? Albert, where do superheroes live?
The Batcave?
Cape Town.
Cape Town. That's terrible. I like it. All right. Thank you, Julius. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day, everyone. Thanks for listening. We love feedback, so we love hearing from you. You can reach me at julius@oneplayerpodcast.com or JLBird on BGG, and Albert can be reached at albert@oneplayerpodcast.com or Fractaloon on BGG. Our website is oneplayerpodcast.com with the number 1, and we're also on Twitter at oneplayerpodcast. The intro music is copyright Angus, can be found at jamendo.com. The transition music is copyright by Dan Elduce Pancaldi, whose page is at donpancaldi.com. The One Player Podcast is protected under a Creative Commons share-alike license. Thanks for listening.